everybody.
Hello.
All right, so thanks for your patience. We're going to get started now. First of all, welcome to Book People, and thank y'all so much for being here. It's because of people like you coming to our events that we get to keep having them, so we really appreciate it. Obviously, the authors really appreciate it, and we hope that you come back for more. We do have over 300 events a year, so make sure to grab a calendar on your way out. I'm sure there'll be something else you'll be interested in coming up. If you haven't already, please silence your cell phones.
Yes, very important, folks. And I got to make sure mine's silenced too. It's always embarrassing when we present and the phone goes off.
So our authors are going to answer some questions or have a signing afterwards. If you haven't bought your book yet or you want to buy some more, they are available for purchase downstairs. And you'll have plenty of time afterwards to go grab one if you haven't gotten to get one already. So don't worry. So tonight we have first Dr. Mike Brooks. He is a licensed psychologist and licensed specialist in school psychology. He's also the director of the Autism Psychology and Assessment Center and maintains a website called Tech Happy Life, devoted to the challenge of living a balanced life in a technological world. He received his doctorate in education and psychology from the University of Texas, which is also where where Dr. Jon Lasser received his doctorate. He is the Associate Dean for Research for the College of Education and Professor of School Psychology at Texas State University. And he is also a licensed psychologist and licensed specialist in school psychology in Texas. He authored Grow Happy and Grow Grateful, as well as School Psychologist School Psychologist as Counselor, a Practitioner's Handbook. They have Dr. Gwendolyn Husfeld, who is a home economist at Texas State University, and she's going to ask them some questions tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me to come and interview you guys about this topic. So there's plenty of things in the world for us to be concerned about right now. Why technology? Is this a big deal?
Thanks for asking, Gwendolyn. One thing we want to say, and we'll steal from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, is don't panic. We're not falling off a cliff into despair and oblivion, as a lot of people might have us believe. That being said, there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about how technology is affecting us. Now, we're not here to throw technology under the bus. We all benefit from it every day, and there are so many ways that, with information, connection, the games, the movies, and, on our cell phones, we have access to all of that. And if someone had told us when we were kids, for grown-ups here, that we could have a little device like this that would have that much power to access basically anything we want at any time, we would think that would make us a lot happier, right? If someone had told us that when we were young, we'd think, wow, what a magical device. Yet, we're not seeing that happen in society. Overall, societal happiness is going down. Now, not off a cliff, but it's just sort of slowly going down a bit. And then for teens and young adults, the rates of depression are going up, anxiety, and suicide rates are going up. And teens today rate themselves as more lonely than when we adults were growing up. And you'd think with all the social media and things that they have access to, that doesn't even make any sense. So there are many reasons to be concerned about technology. In a way, we look at it as sort of quietly leeching away our happiness and productivity if we're not careful, if we don't learn to use it in mindful and balanced ways, which is what our book, Tech Generation, Raising Balanced Kids in a Hyper-Connected World, is all about, trying to find that balance.
And I'll add to that the developmental needs of your children and grandchildren aren't really different than what your developmental needs were when you were a kid, right? We all need to have love and a bond with a caregiver. We all need to eat nutritious food and get sunshine and exercise. So what's different is that we didn't grow up looking at screens as much as our kids do now. So the question for us is, what does the research say about that? And how, as parents and grandparents and other adults who care about children, how do we deal with this? What kind of strategies can we deploy to make sure that our kids don't end up having developmental problems? Because every hour that they're in front of the screen is an hour they're not doing something else. So what are they missing, and how do we make sure they're getting what they need?
So you mentioned screens, you mentioned phones, obviously technology is a big topic. What would you say is our greatest or most specific area of concern?
So in the book, we of course cover this, that there are things like cyberbullying and a lot of ways that technology can be misused that parents are concerned about, predators and things like that. But those, although they occur and there are reasons to be concerned, the broader concern is the way we're incessantly using our phones, the time we're spending on our phones, the time checking our phones, and it's like part of our body now. And you see, young people and adults carrying them around at all times, not having any downtime, like being bored, just standing in a line. You look at airports and things like that, and everybody's on their phone. And again, not that that's inherently bad, but the cumulative effect of all of our eyes on our technology instead of each other is taking its toll. And as Jon was saying, our psychological needs have not changed in hundreds of thousands of years. So we all have the same needs we did 10,000, 50,000 years ago. And those are for relatedness, social connection, kind of autonomy, a sense of agency, and competence, feeling a sense of mastery. Those haven't changed at all, but what has changed is from an evolutionary standpoint, those were always met in the context of in-person relationships. So technology has just shifted things so much, so quickly. It has zoomed past biological evolution. You think of the Turing machine and things, 50, 60, 70 years ago, they used to have computers that would take up a whole floor of a building. Our cell phones right now, the ones we carry, are 10,000 times more powerful in terms of CPU speed than the combined power of NASA's computers that were used to land men on the moon. And we're carrying that around every day. And in a way, we're at the tip of a very formidable iceberg. It's not going to get easier over time. Facebook and Amazon and things, they're not going to back off and just say, well, hey, people are using our devices too much. So if we don't get a hold of this, what's going to happen is, and I think what's happening and why our happiness isn't going up, is we're not very good at balancing the pros and cons of technology in a mindful way that allows us to reap more of the benefits and minimize the negatives. So it's getting in the way of the fundamental ways that we need to meet our psychological needs, which are mainly within each other.
And I'll add to that, I think that we're also seeing kids accessing technology at a younger and younger age. So one of the questions we get a lot is, well, at what age is a child ready for a smartphone? A lot of parents want to know the answer to that. And we will never give you a number, because that's not our approach. We think that every child is different and they have different developmental needs. But,
Sorry.
But we know parents that are giving them to 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and as psychologists we know that young children really aren't ready to handle that kind of responsibility and a lot of the stuff that comes with it. So, for example, when many of us were children, we had some drama at school, but it usually stayed at school, right? And now we talk to kids who are texting all through the night and some of that bullying, and it's really hard for kids to navigate the social stresses, and it's 24/7 instead of leaving it at home. And the access to inappropriate content that's not appropriate for the age, it's hard for kids to process that. And a lot of that is done alone without conversations with adults who care. So we have concerns about that too.
You mentioned balance. I was raised in a television-free, screen-free family, right? So the only technology we had was radio.
I'm sorry about that.
There was the 2 hours they held me down in college so I could watch MTV for the first time, right? But love in an elevator, that's what I remember. But that's one end of the spectrum, right? So you talk about balance. Obviously, my parents were on one end, right? The people with their toddlers using, or 2-year-olds using phones might be on the other end. Where's the balance?
Well, again, it's different for every family. I think that some families have found ways to engage with technology where the parents aren't concerned and the kids seem to be thriving and doing well because of factors like maturity and good self-regulation and good open conversations about family needs. Out of balance often looks like, hey, I can't get your attention right now because you're looking at your screen too much. And I've heard that before. So we're not about techno judging. We recognize that all of us are involved in this. So out of balance is not getting enough sleep, not getting enough face-to-face communication in real time, not getting enough exercise, all of those basic needs that we've been talking about. Technology has a way of eclipsing those needs. And there's an addictive quality to it. So it's hard to keep it in check. And often the person who has the problem doesn't think they have a problem. Oh, you've got your time.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. John and I agree with most things, not everything, because this is a really complicated topic, of course, and the balance is about how do we effectively meet our needs. And if things are in balance with our technology use and our lives in general, we're meeting our physical needs and our psychological needs effectively, and we're fairly happy and content. And happy doesn't mean, big smiles on our faces all the time. The research on happiness, they call it subjective well-being, which is more a sense of deep-rooted contentment. And that's what we get when we're meeting our needs effectively. And as John said, there's a tendency to overuse technology because of many of the qualities about it that can be addictive. It taps into the same reward mechanisms in our brain that are involved in addictive drugs. So, checking our Facebook post or something like that's not like snorting cocaine. Not that I know about that, but it's not that level. But if you see how many times people are checking their phones, they're just getting this little dopamine all the time. And one of the things in our research that was clear, a lot of people have a misunderstanding about how dopamine works in the brain with the reward center. It's in the anticipation phase that dopamine is released. So when our cell phones buzz, the dopamine is released right then. It's not when we're looking at the message. It really doesn't matter. Once it buzzes, the dopamine's already been released. It's in the anticipatory phase. So there's a tendency to overuse technology because of some of these addictive qualities, and how also it's called persuasive technology, how companies are embedding addictive qualities within their games and apps, like snap streaks and things like that. That's designed. They hire neuroscientists and psychologists to manipulate us to keep our eyes on our screen. It's really hard to say no. And so what happens is we overuse technology and we're not very cognizant of it. We might see it in other people, but we have a weird tendency not to see it in ourselves. I know lots of people with trouble with technology personally, but and then it starts to eclipse and get in the way of meeting our physical and psychological needs.
So, we remember when computers showed up in school, and then they started talking about digital natives, right? And now they're talking about young people who've never known a time without mobile phones, for example. Why now? What is different about the technology now than previous iterations? Why has this topic become more urgent?
Well, in part, the mobility aspect of it. When we had home computers, we left them at home. We didn't take them to the park. We didn't take them to the beach. Now you don't go for a hike anywhere without taking out your phone to take a picture of yourself on the hike, right? And Snapchat it off to somebody. So I think
get this.
Didn't happen if you don't have a picture.
So exactly. So
That's right.
I think the mobility has a lot to do with it. In fact, a lot of parents had set limits on kids with television watching. You can only watch so many hours. How do you set limits when the kid is taking Netflix in their pocket everywhere they go? How do you regulate? And there are apps to do that, and parents have had mixed success with that. I was talking to one parent who said that her son had hacked the app and had found a workaround so he could still
Yes.
exactly. The same child actually also hacked the school's reading reward system and awarded points to himself and his friends. So
That was nice of him.
yeah, bright kid.
Very generous.
So that's one thing. And then the part that Mike said about how the developers have intentionally worked in an addictive quality to it that makes us, and that's not entirely new. The cliffhanger in the novel, in the serial novel, was a way of making you want more.
Little Nell might die.
Exactly. But it's ever present now, and we always want more.
Yeah, I agree, and it's weird to think is that, like, if you're old enough as a parent, you can remember the before this type of technology, and I'm proud to say my generation ushered in the video game era, and John's too, and so I played from very beginning. They had me at hello, and if I were growing up now, I'd probably never want to leave my room with the games that they have. So one of the things we all need to be careful of, and he was talking about the techno judgment, is as parents to know in the truth and be able to accept this and tell our kids is that the only reason we didn't use cell phones when we were young is because we didn't have them. If we had them, we'd be all over them doing the exact same things our kids are doing now. But before, it was like we were rarely on technology. You'd have these little moments throughout the day. If you could graph it or plot it, you'd see these little times. And then as time went on, it was we could gain access to the internet, and then when we were on it more. But then once the mobility and the cell phones hit, then it's always with us. Now we're rarely off. As John was saying, it's like when people go on hikes, they have it with them. I mean, I see it at the gym, guys in the sauna, the wet sauna, with their cell phones, and you see all over. Just yesterday when I was driving, I saw a kid that was probably about 13, and he was texting while he was riding his bike with one hand. He was obviously texting, and no helmet, one hand on the handlebars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but that's the world we've become, and it's in wearables, it's getting every Amazon Echo and things like that. So the way the technologies have developed and the way the companies are using them, our time is whittling down to very, very little time where we're off our devices.
So I'm really excited to have this analog experience with your book. But give me a little taster. If there was one takeaway that I'm going to get from reading the book that might help me think about creating this balance, what might be the one takeaway?
Well, first you said analog experience. It is available on Kindle, so point that out.
Okay.
I'm hoping for the audiobook version, but we got to work our angle. I love audiobooks. It's really enhanced my life. I stand behind them. Sorry.
I always wondered though, can you say you read a book if you listen to
Yes.
it?
Yes, you can.
Okay, we won't have that debate. But
I read a cognitive neuroscientist said the same.
well, this psychologist says he's not so sure.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
what we were asked this question in another interview, and it's the answer would be different for parents of different ages, but the number one recommendation is spend time with your kids, playing with your kids, reading to your kids, swimming with your kids, doing things off devices with your kids. That's our number one recommendation.
Yeah, and it goes back to the relationship. So we're trying to invest in what we're trying to preserve, and because that is it's the foundation of our model, our Tech Happy Life model within the book is the foundation is the relationship with our kids, and we have to invest in the time, which means we've got to get off our own devices long enough to have our eyes on our kids, and that's a real problem because there's almost as high a percentage of teens who view their parents as addicted to their smartphones as there are parents who view teens addicted to smartphones. And it's hard for all of us to unplug. I mean, it's got its hooks in all of us. And I know I wrestle with it too sometimes. And, you know, I could tell you some stories that it's like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe I did that. But that's how powerful of an effect it has. So we have to make a very mindful, conscious effort to do this and carve out the time and space to be with our kids and our partners that is tech-free time and make it like these, what's a plural of an oasis? Oasi? We got to have several of the, you know, really mark it out in the day and spend the time with our kids you look like a warm and accepting audience, so I'm just going to out myself here because this is something I used to be really ashamed of when I was a teen, but I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I love it. I still play. I'm just a nerd. But, you know, I play with my family. I have friends I play with, and, you know, the magic is still there. Kids, when parents play board games with their kids, and we'll ask audiences when we present about this, you know, do you ever play board games? And did the kids like it? Yes, all the hands go up. They really enjoy it. But it's so easy to turn on a screen, pick up the iPad, but we've got to be the leaders and model this and make a concerted effort to carve out the time to spend it with our kids and each other, tech-free.
I'm excited to read the book. If I wanted to get a hold of you to ask you to come and make a presentation on this topic to a group that I was involved in, how would I do that? Call him.
Yeah, I get cards, and you know, we do a lot of these. Both of us as school psychologists, we present a lot to schools, to corporations we've done, but it's a topic, it's a hot topic. Every parent is struggling with this in some way, shape, or form, every family. So I, you know, applaud everyone here to, you know, that's taken this seriously, because it's one of those, it's easy to put it on the back burner and just, there's other things to do, you know, tend to, but if we don't pay attention to this and work on it, it's going to keep invading our lives in ways that, you know, suddenly there's the story of the boiling frog, John, that we have in our book, that the story is something like this, and it's not true in a factual sense, as a herpetologist would tell you, but it is true in the real sense of the word, is that if you put, and we don't recommend trying this, if you put a frog into a pot of boiling water, it would hop right out, but if you put it in warm water and gradually heat it up, it'll stay until it dies. And, you know, there's a very much a similarity of what's going on to society right now with technology. So I hope you all take the book, get a copy of the book. We're happy to sign. And, you know, if you want us to present, please talk to us about that. We're happy to set something up. And thanks so much for coming out tonight. And if you like the book, you know, Amazon reviews, Goodreads. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Oh my God! Look what I've done! Oh, so easy to fall into the trap.
I'm gonna let you applaud, and then I'm gonna make an announcement that's unrelated. So, thank you very much. You can take out your phones now, and you can mark your calendar, because I'll be back here on October the 20th with her to do an event for our children's book about gratitude, which is called Grow Grateful, a sweet picture book for children 4 to 8 on October 20th.
And who is her?
Oh, that's my daughter, Sage. my co-author daughter, Sage. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move over to the
Yeah.
dining table.
Thanks, folks. Oh, questions, yes.
I asked all the
Dang.
questions.
I try to
yeah.
avoid
Oh,
that because we
yeah.
don't have the answers. Oh
Oh,
my gosh, questions.
yes.
This was awesome. It's such a great topic. And we both work with kids, many of us do. And I do these presentations on anxiety in children, and I always bring up the book by Manfred Spitzer, the German brain researcher, called Digital Dimension. Though he's my age, 60. He has 6 kids of his own, and he doesn't let them on screens till 17. And he actually talks about brain development. So it's very controversial, but he came and spoke in AISD. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I would have reported him to CPS for abusing his kids because, oh my God, I
and
can't
they play
imagine.
musical instruments, and they do all these. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty hardcore. we're more of the bound. I mean, we've heard that, and some families, if you can make it work, but we're more try to find the middle ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's not practical for most families nowadays.
Yeah.
But it sounds great to me.
I mean, I come home and get online and he's reading, and I just would rather play my Scrabble game because I have more control than a conversation with him. You know what I'm saying?
So
It's
it
not
was-
easier, it's just me.
It was
and
just
this
the
little
threat
thing.
of Satan that kept us off of television. Okay, so my parents had to recruit Satan, okay, to keep us off of TV.
Right.
We forgot to put that in our book. Gosh, dang it. Version 2.
There does seem to be, right, it's an easy babysitter as well as TV. A question, on the positive side, are you seeing research shows that there's any positive cognitive development that's happening with kids from
There are
some of the
certainly
access to
measurable
technology?
benefits of kids engaging. In fact, there's been research on video games about improving your fine motor skills and manual dexterity and hand-eye coordination. So there is some of that. Our take on it is, okay, there are some benefits, but too much of a good thing isn't so good, right? So we've got to balance that out and consider the benefits, but also the costs. It'd be easy to cherry pick and select and say, oh, video games are so good for you, right? Here's this study that showed that these kids scored better on some sort of test of hand-eye coordination. But that would be ignoring all of the evidence about the harms of too much tech.
Right, and so for a game like Minecraft, I think it's a great game, and probably if you have kids, they've played it at some point, or Roblox, and there's a lot of building and creativity and things like that. So like if we did some type of test and measured, there'd probably be some measurable benefits of that, but then what about comparing that to building a fort outside with a group of friends? So that's not the type of study they would ever do, and there are so many benefits to the other. So it's not to say that Minecraft or something like that doesn't have its benefits. It's the opportunity cost of what else could they be doing that could be even more beneficial. And our take is, well, you don't have to say no Minecraft, just not 6 hours of Minecraft a day. Get out and build the fort too.
And on top of that, we look at different kinds of tech use. If you're passively binge watching Netflix, that's very different from creating music on the computer, right? There's one has a creative and active element. The other is more passive, just letting the screen glow wash over you. So we have to think about the quality of the media and how it's being used.
Any other questions?
Are you concerned about microwaves? I say that not as somebody who's thinking in terms of conspiracies, but simply at UT, I think it's in the computer area, they have this great big human body, and they show the red, blue, yellow, and so forth, the amount of how far in and how intensely the microwaves go when you have a cell phone.
Oh, right.
And it's I go home and I say to the grandkids, get away from them. Get away
Yeah.
from them. All of
Run
it.
away, Satan! Watch out! No. Yes, there are concerns there. I'm not sure that we cover that explicitly in the book. It's controversial. Like it's hard to measure long-term effects, cumulative effects, And you can't do a study, I've tried proposing one with separating twins at birth and like exposing one to a lot of smartphones, and it's never gonna happen.
Run it by the IRB at Texas State.
Yeah, we'll see if we can, he's some strings there. And the other is like babies' skulls are thinner, and so there's more of a concern. So like a mother who's nursing and has the cell phone right there, there's a greater concern. And what I would say is, let's err on the side of caution a bit with that. It's good to be mindful of it, although the jury's still out on the extent, does it cause brain cancer? There's still a lot of debate about that.
Well, it keeps her from gazing.
Right. So that's like a much more direct, because you see parents like pushing their kids in the stroller, and they're on their phone instead of talking to their kids and stuff like that. And so it's what's being missed out on, because there's a ton of research on an attachment theory of how we attach with our infants. And if they're securely attached, that's predictive of healthy development and healthy functioning later in life. And if those attachment needs aren't met, then there will be consequences. And so that's exactly what you're talking about. And
just to clarify, he means attached to a caregiver, not to an iPhone.
Yes, just to be clear.
In my work with teenagers, what I see happening is these kids who are depressed, they use the phone because they don't have attachments. They don't have that attachment at home or something. At least that's what it seems like to me. And they're trying to get something.
Yeah, no, that's a serious concern. And
then that shuts them off, so they become more and more depressed.
And of course, it's really hard
Yes.
by the time they're teenagers. Our book is very prevention oriented. It's in some ways ideal for the person starting a family, right? Because then you can apply some of these strategies to how do I want my new child to develop in a world of technology. Although we have sort of a leveling system in our book. Prevention is the first level. But there's also sort of an at-risk level where things seem to be getting out of balance or out of hand, and then what we call the red light level, where things are what you're describing, basically, more serious interventions needed.
I remember taking the laptop out of a teen's room at night because it got dead. It's coming out.
Right.
He was had it late at night, and I
Yeah.
just get in there.
That's one of the preventative strategies at our green light level of our
And they
model.
get grouchy, kids. I think after certain games,
Yes,
they're irritable.
yeah. It's hard to unplug and transition. Yeah, no, and for younger kids especially, like, ending of screen time can be very difficult. Yeah, for sure.
So we want to give enough time for you guys to sign all the copies that everyone's going to buy. Is there one last question?
Okay, so do you have, in your book, a, like suggestions of when it's time for them to start making decisions and when to stop okay, you have an hour, when to let them make their own decisions and how to do it?
It's a great question. Ours it's a developmentally conscious model, so that's what we're shooting for. Is self-regulation. So it's this dance of parenting, and we subsume the technology issues. Really, it's about how do we parent our kids, and technology poses a particular challenge that's ever evolving and a moving target. But that's the question of, ultimately our kids have to self-regulate. And when they go off to college, if we regulate everything for them, they never learn to really develop that skill. So the dance of parenting is we have to allow a certain amount of freedom for our kids to try things out. And when it gets out of control, then we may need to step in more and rein it in. And when they're younger, we also control more. But as they get older, and especially once they're teenagers, it gets very, very difficult to step in and limit their screen time. And one of the ironies is the fight. If we think of this, the weird question is like, well, why do we limit screen time to begin with? Why would we want to do that? The answer is, well, it's for their own good. It's so they'll be happier and healthier. Yet the fights over screen time sometimes could be more damaging from excessive screen time. So it's a weird position to be in. But we talk about collaborative problem solving in our book is one of the ways to engage our kids in a dialogue about screen time limits. So there's a conversation going on, so it's not all top down. That doesn't mean our kids get to say exactly how it's going to be, but we listen to it and we see if we can negotiate, and that develops a problem-solving skill in them as well.
I think your question was at what age, and we just avoid that like the plague because every kid is different, right? But I think that it's wise for parents to look to their children and ask, well, how do they handle other decision making? In what areas have they shown responsibility or have they not shown responsibility? And use that as a guide to say, okay, I think my child is ready to do some self-regulating. But there's also a scaffolding approach. We don't just let children self-regulate immediately. We help them self-regulate. So we have conversations about how do you feel when you're in front of a screen? Do you ever feel like it's too much? What do you think would be a good amount of time? Doesn't mean that they get to call all the shots, but we seek their input because they know themselves too.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.